Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream here from Empty Cloud Monastery. And so we'll be doing a period of meditation. So I'll give some guidance towards the beginning. And we'll do some meditation practice together. Then I'll read a few more verses from the Dhammapada, from the translation I've been working on. And I'll give some explanations and then take any questions that you have at the end. So please start by getting in a stable sitting position for meditation practice. So this is the best position for meditation is one that is stable and upright and that you can sustain for a long period of time. And which is, most importantly, which is supportive to your meditation practice. This is not necessarily the most comfortable position. For example, it's very comfortable to be slouching in an easy chair, but that's not good for meditation practice. Similarly, it's very comfortable to be lying down on your memory foam mattress, but again, that's not necessarily supportive to your meditation practice. The best thing is actually to be sitting upright in a cross-legged position, optimally the lotus position if you can. Otherwise, any stable sitting position is okay. With the spine straight, the shoulders swept back, the pelvis tilted slightly forward, the chest elevated, the chin leveled to parallel to the ground, or tilted very slightly forward, and your hands resting gently in your lap. You can start by taking a few long, slow, deep breaths. So as you breathe out, letting go of all the air in your lungs, as if you're letting go of all the tension in your body, letting go of all the activities of the day, letting go of all the thoughts and emotions in the mind. And when you breathe in, it's like you're breathing in energy and alertness. Breathing in uprightness and stability. To breathing out, relaxing and letting go of all things. Breathing in, energizing and stabilizing the mind. Take a moment to remember the Buddha. Remember that there are such marvelous beings, people who have developed limitless wisdom and limitless compassion, people who have completely conquered all defilements, who are completely free from all dukkha, who clearly understand the deepest truths about reality. And remembering that in the long course of attaining Buddhahood, at some point, every single Buddha was at the same stage we are in now. At some point, they had the same level of morality, the same level of samadhi, the same level of wisdom. At some point, they were just like us. And through their own diligent, ongoing effort in cultivating sila, samadhi, and panya, they eventually became Buddhas. So, starting from where you are right now, we too can become Buddhas. All we need to do is follow in their footsteps, develop the same practices that they developed, and we will become just like them. The same qualities of the Buddha are accessible to us with training and practice. So now we'll be practicing some of the same things that all the Buddhas practiced on their way to awakening. Practicing sati, practicing samadhi, practicing upekkha, practicing metta. So mindfulness, concentration, equanimity, and kindness. So with an attitude of gentleness and compassion, focus all your attention on clearly feeling your own body, bringing full awareness to feeling every single molecule of your whole body, like a single vast constellation made up of millions of tiny stars. Feeling the whole body all at once. There's no need to move the mind around. You can feel the whole body in a single moment without moving your mind at all. So just focus on clearly, intensely feeling your entire body. And completely accepting your body just as it is, whether it feels hot or cold, whether it feels pleasant or painful, whether it feels large or small, heavy or light. No matter how it feels, it's completely accepting that it is exactly the way it should be. And enjoying how the body feels when it's saturated with sharp, clear, steady attention. If your mind is becoming more focused, you can try focusing on the feeling of your hands touching in your lap, or even focusing on the feeling of your thumb tips touching. Small point of contact between the tips of your thumbs. Still keeping a full awareness of the body, but using a more refined point of awareness to make sure the mind is steady and unmoving. Keep cultivating a sharp, steady, and joyful attention towards the body. Take no interest in anything else besides the body. Okay, you can adjust your posture. So at this time, we can start by paying homage to the Buddha, and then I'll begin with Dhamma verses. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, good evening. So, as mentioned, we'll be continuing with going through some of the Dhammapada verses from the ongoing translation I've been working on. So, today we'll be looking at 3 verses which are not particularly related in topic, but they're all wonderful verses and worth looking closely at. So these verses are verses 78, 81, and 83. So I'll start with verse 78 from the Dhammapada. So I'll read the translation. This is my own translation for these verses. So I'll read the translation and then refer back to the Pali when necessary. So verse 78 says, "Do not associate with evil friends. Do not associate with lowly people. Associate with good spiritual friends and with the highest of people." So this is touching on one of the very important concepts in Buddhism. One of the things the Buddha emphasized, which is that our thoughts, our beliefs, our opinions, our speech, our actions are all heavily influenced and conditioned by the people that we spend time with. So as much as we like to think that we make our own choices in life and we go our own way and we do our own thing, the reality is that very often that's actually not what we're doing. Very often what we're doing is that we are mimicking the behaviors that we see in the people around us. We're mimicking the behaviors that we see in movies and shows. We're mimicking the behaviors that we read about in books. So very often what we're doing is we're not actually expressing our own unique individual personality, if we even had such a thing. But rather what we're doing is that we're simply displaying our conditioning. We're just displaying to the world how good we are at being brainwashed by the people that we associate with. And of course, we're having the same influence on other people. So this is actually quite noticeable if you get 2 people who become good friends and they start spending a lot of time together, then they'll start picking up each other's mannerisms and idioms. So maybe you have one person who they like to use the word marvelous a lot, and the other person maybe hardly ever uses that word. But as the 2 people spend a lot of time together, then eventually both people wind up using the word marvelous frequently. So there's this influence that has been had. And the person who's being influenced may not even have any awareness that that's what's going on. Even to the point where they start to think that, oh, well, this is just how I talk. They might even start to think that that's the way they like to talk, or it's the way they've chosen to talk. So then what happens then if you spend time with people who are immoral, people who have poor sila, who aren't much interested in practicing kindness, aren't much interested in practicing generosity, aren't much interested in practicing mindfulness, self-restraint, wisdom. Or even worse, people who are actively committed to the opposite, who are actively committed to cruelty, to hostility, to resentment, actively committed to taking things without permission, even stealing things, even hurting or harming other living beings, who are actively committed to damaging their mindfulness and self-restraint, such as by consuming intoxicants, who are not interested in cultivating wisdom, and maybe instead are building up their foolishness and delusion by reading a bunch of wild conspiracy theories or reading the fake teachings of the various disreputable teachers that are around these days, pseudo-spiritual teachers, or people who get wrapped up in all the bizarre pseudo-psychology that's really popular these days. It's actually mind-blowing how much utter nonsense there is that is being spread around as if it was expressing some deep truth about the human mind. But actually, it's just somebody's opinions that then starts to become popular. And then people start to take it seriously and believe it. So our mind is extremely easily influenced. So the Buddha is saying that it's very important that we deliberately choose to be surrounded by good influences. So of course, optimally, you want to learn how to make your mind less easy to influence. You want to make your mind more impervious to the influences of the people around you in the outside world. Of course, that's wise. A Buddha could be in the presence of a completely evil person and not be the slightest bit influenced by that evil person. But in the meantime, we should be making an active effort to also surround ourselves with good influences, with people who are deeply committed to morality, deeply committed to kindness, deeply committed to generosity, people who value mindfulness, who value samadhi, who value meditation practice, people who value self-restraint, who value the cultivation of wisdom, who value studying and contemplating and discussing the Buddha's teachings. So this is what the Buddha means by good spiritual friends. The Pali term for this is kalyana mitta. And the word kalyana literally means beautiful. And it's sometimes used in the Pali text in a literal way, like a beautiful person, a person who's physically beautiful. But most commonly, the Buddha actually uses it metaphorically to refer to someone who has a beautiful heart, someone who's cultivated beautiful qualities of heart and mind. And these are the qualities of awakening, the qualities of compassion and wisdom, which culminate in full awakening. That's what makes a person genuinely beautiful. And that's the kind of friends that we want to associate with, because then we will start to be influenced by their goodness. We'll start to be influenced by their beautiful qualities of heart. So this does actually mean that you might need to let go of some of your friendships. So often when people get interested in Buddhist practice, so whether they're beginning in this life or whether they've been practicing since they were born, or whether maybe they've been practicing for many lifetimes. But when they start to get serious about their practice and they start examining their friendships, they might start to realize that many of those friendships are ultimately toxic in the sense that they're antithetical to Buddhist practice. So you might have someone who's been a very good friend for many, many years, but ultimately you have to face the facts that that person influences you in ways contrary to the Dhamma. They influence you in ways which are the opposite of what the Buddha taught. And then you do need to make the wise decision to spend less time with that person and to spend more time with the friends who support you in developing your Buddhist qualities. So this is again, it's a very important concept, the concept of kalyana mitta, and being careful who we associate with. Another thing in another sutta, the Buddha mentions also that one of the dangers of associating with bad people, even if you don't receive a negative influence from being around that person, even if you manage to keep your own purity of mind, other people will not trust you. If you spend all your time hanging out with bad people, then other people will start to assume that you're the same as your friends, that you have the same inclinations of mind as your friends. So they won't trust you. They'll keep their distance from you. And that also is a problem, because then you'll have a hard time cultivating wholesome, supportive friendships. So this is something very important. Remember that friendships are not something that just happen automatically, but rather we do have a volitional component in friendships. We can choose who we choose to be friends with, who we choose to be friendly with, who we choose to value as companions. And we should be choosing our friends and companions not based upon our preferences, but rather based upon how it affects our Buddhist practice, how it influences us, and whether that influence is wholesome or unwholesome. So those are my thoughts on Dhammapada verse 78. The next one I wanted to speak about was Dhammapada verse 81. This is a very short and very beautiful verse. It says, "Just as the wind does not move solid stone, praise and criticism do not disturb the wise." So this is the kind of mind that we're trying to develop. So just as wind does not move solid stone, in the same way, praise and criticism does not disturb the wise. So we want to have the kind of mind which is impervious to both praise and criticism. So what normally happens when we're being praised, what normally happens is that we get arrogant and conceited, and it's like, oh yes, it's true, I am great, it's true, yeah, bring it, yeah, I know, I'm amazing, facts. And we start to get inflated and puffed up with conceit and arrogance, fixated on how awesome we are. Or some people, they get very uncomfortable when they're praised. And often that's because they have an internal negative self-image. And receiving contrary information, even though it's positive, creates a cognitive dissonance, a disconnect between what they're hearing and what they really believe about themselves. And that can create a lot of internal discomfort as well. And then criticism. So what happens when we're criticized, when other people point out flaws in us? Well, very often we get defensive, we get angry, maybe we feel hurt, we get upset, we might feel resentment. And a lot of this is coming, once again, from self-centeredness. We think that person is attacking me. That person is assaulting me. But what's actually going on? Well, if that person's criticism is valid, then they're giving you a tremendous gift. They're giving you the opportunity to identify and counteract your own faults. How wonderful. How kind of them. How kind of them to try to help you become more like the Buddha. Isn't that exactly what we want people to be doing? Helping us along the path? And if their criticism is not valid, well, then you can just recognize, well, their criticism is not valid. It's not true. So I don't need to be bothered by it. They're just expressing their own delusion, their own confusion. Well, how sad for them. May they be free of their delusion and confusion. Or maybe somebody is criticizing you out of pure hatred and hostility, malice. Well, once again, how sad for them. How sad that they're so lost in their own defilements that they're verbally attacking other people. But once again, you don't need to take it personally. So this is why praise and criticism do not disturb the wise, because the wise don't take it personally. Instead, a wise person will look at those words and see, is there any useful information here? Is there any information here which can actually help me make progress towards awakening? If so, great. If not, well, oh well. The world is full of empty words. The world is full of useless speech, so we don't need to be bothered by it. So the wind blows over the stone, but the stone is not moved. And the third verse I wanted to speak about today, let me see, verse 83. This one's on a different topic a little bit. This one says, good people let go of everything. The peaceful do not prattle about sensuality. Whether they are touched by pleasure or pain, neither elation nor depression can be seen in the wise. So this one is actually quite deep. So first off, good people let go of everything. That's actually a summary of Buddhism right there. Once the Buddha was asked to summarize Buddhist practice into a single sentence, and the Buddha replied, nothing whatsoever should be held on to. Sabbang dhammang nalang abhinivesaya. Or no thing should be settled on, is another way to translate that. Don't stick to anything. Nothing is worth sticking to. So good people let go of everything. So no matter where we go, no matter what we experience, we're trying to have a mind like an open hand. So things just pass right through. We're aware of them, but they don't stick. There's an old insult. You say someone has a mind like a sieve. And it's meant to be insulting because the idea is that they're always forgetting things. But actually, we should have a mind like a sieve in the sense that we don't hold on to anything. Whatever comes to us, we let it flow through the mind without sticking. Because then there's no problem. The mind is not resisting anything. The mind is not holding on to anything. Things just flow through the mind without sticking. So good people let go of everything. This is also, it's pointing to deep meditation practice. In deep meditation practice, we're practicing letting go of all things, including letting go of our self-identity, letting go of who and what we think we are, letting go of our body, letting go of our thoughts, letting go of our emotions, letting go of everything. Doesn't mean getting rid of everything, because it's also letting go of the wish for things to go away. So whether things are present or not doesn't matter to us. Whether thoughts and emotions are present or not doesn't matter. What physical sensations are present doesn't matter. So we have clear awareness while letting go of everything. So this is the practice of animitta samadhi, the practice of objectless concentration, or silent illumination practice. Then the next line says, the peaceful do not prattle about sensuality. Again, if you spend some time hanging out with ordinary unenlightened people, which is most people, notice how much time they spend chattering on and on about sensuality. They're like, oh, well, the pizza over there is really good. That's a great pizza place. And, oh, I heard this great song yesterday. It was so nice. And, oh, and I went out with my boyfriend and it was awesome. And people just ramble on and on and on about the sensual pleasures that can be had in samsara. And okay, fair enough. There are such things and they can be pleasant to a degree. There's a certain amount of pleasantness to be had in them. But ultimately, they're completely unsatisfying. Ultimately, they're temporary and unsatisfying. And we cannot build a sense of self on them because they're fleeting. There's no substance to them. So one who is truly peaceful within themselves is not interested in sensuality because one knows that the pursuit of sensuality disturbs one's peace. True peace is found in letting go of everything, including letting go of sensual desire, letting go of any interest in any kind of sensual experience. And also letting go of the wish for pleasure and the desire to avoid pain, which is why the next statement here is whether they're touched by pleasure or pain, neither elation nor depression can be seen in the wise. So normally when an ordinary person has a pleasant experience, they get really excited and elated and joyful. It's like, yay, pleasant stuff is happening to me. And then when they feel pain, they get really depressed and downhearted and annoyed, even angry, as though the world is playing some cruel trick on them. How dare this body get sick? This body is supposed to be healthy for all eternity. Is it? Is samsara playing a cruel trick on you, or is that just the way it is? You stub your toe and your toe hurts. Whose fault is that? Is there any point in laying fault on it? It's just the nature of reality. If you hit your toe against a hard object, then there will be pain. It's not personal. It's just the way things are. So once again, if one doesn't take physical sensations personally, then they have no power to agitate the mind. So elation is a form of agitation and depression is a form of agitation. Both of them indicate a mind which has departed from peacefulness, a mind which is blurry and unstable and unclear. So we're trying to cultivate a mind which is undisturbed by anything, not agitated or unbalanced by any experience whatsoever. So this is the practice of equanimity, of upekkha, to be clearly aware without reactivity, without disturbance, without either attachment or rejection, without either desire or aversion. So these are the verses I wanted to speak about today. So again, verses 78, 81, and 83. So we can respect these Dhammapada verses with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So at this time, I can take any questions that you might have. So you're welcome to put questions in the comments section. So I see a number of friends checking in. So hello to Kumu, John, Mary, Patricia, Angela, Jordan, Niranjan, Jayanta, Amaranta, Gita, Chandula, Sukanya, Sud. Hello to all of you. Mary says, I don't think my mom ever read Dhammapada 78, but she always told me, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. Yeah, that's a common idiom. There's a surprising number of common idioms which are in accord with Dhamma. And this is because Dhamma is universal truth. And throughout human history, periodically, people touch upon some piece of the Dhamma. And they immortalize it in a saying or an idiom or some piece of folklore or in various spiritual traditions. So it's not uncommon to encounter things outside of Buddhism that sound incredibly Buddhist, because ultimately Buddhism is just describing reality as it is. So anybody who gets a glimpse of a deeper truth is likely to say something that resembles Buddhism. And I see a question here. So Sud, so much appreciation for all the donations you've been sending the monastery, all the supplies and offerings, which much appreciated. So Sud says, do you recommend doing anusati like buddhanusati meditation to stabilize the mind so that eventually equanimity develops? Yeah, actually during the meditation instructions, I started with a couple minutes of buddhanusati, so recollecting the Buddha. This can be a really good way to start a period of meditation. So I don't personally like to do a whole meditation period just of Buddhanusati, though I know some monks who actually regularly do that and get a lot of benefit from it. But I do like to do a little bit just as a way of priming the mind. So reminding the mind that we're about to do something very special. Sometimes when we do meditation practice, it can seem kind of bland. Like we're just like, okay, it's time to sit down and focus on the body. Okay, the body's really boring. When's the bell gonna ring? Okay, still waiting for that bell. But instead, we remember the Buddha and we're like, oh, I'm doing exactly the same practices that the Buddha did in order to become a Buddha. How wonderful. So it can bring up a strong sense of enthusiasm, a sense of determination, a sense of the preciousness and value of what we're doing. So that's actually kind of a blend of Buddhanusati and Dhammanusati. But it's a practice which I find helpful, if, especially if you need a little extra encouragement, a little extra spark of motivation. That can be a powerful way of doing it. And John asks, with verse 78, you talked about picking up traits of those who you associate with. Would this be a good example of interconnectedness? Yeah, that's an example. So interconnectedness, yeah, ultimately we all influence each other. You can't really draw sharp lines between people. Whenever you come together with other people, your personalities will start to blur together at the edges. So it is important to be careful who you spend time with, because you will start to pick up elements of their personality if you're not careful. Even if you are careful, there tends to be some influence whether you like it or not. So it is important to make sure that you spend most of your time with good people. And so John further says, no one has a set personality. A personality holds elements of those we associate with. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, our personality is constantly changing, depending upon the conditions in our life. And in Buddhism, we are trying to take control of that process to shape our personality in a way that leads towards awakening. And part of the way we shape the process is by changing the conditions in our life. Other ways are through taking on practices like, again, Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Those are ways that we shape our personality. But also things like changing our external habits, our external friends, our external activities. These are very powerful ways of conditioning the mind in a more circumstantial way. So we train our mind in both passive and active ways. And that's the last question from online. Anything from in person? Yeah?
Can I ask a question about the meditation?
Mm-hmm.
I've always understood the Brahman Viharas as being conditioned. And then I thought you gave the example of compassion being limitless. So in the awakened mind, do the Brahman Viharas become unconditioned?
I guess so. I've actually never really thought about it in that way. Bring that up again during monk chat. I think that'd be a really interesting question to have a deeper conversation around. Anything else? Okay. And I don't see anything else from online. So the Dhammapada kind of speaks for itself. It's very powerful verses. So I think we can go ahead and end it this time. So we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And you can go ahead and join in tomorrow for another session of Sutta study. So we'll see you then.